Waluigi is the subject of a lot of debate within the Smash community, both good and bad. In fact, a year ago I made a video doing one last analysis of Waluigi, and this year I have a few more things to add. I have seen a lot of people get more riled up over the inclusion of Waluigi than I have any other topic in Smash Bros. History besides the Grinch leak. But why? Why has the icon of this chaotic, unrestrained energy and randomness become the symbol of Smash Rebellion that we all know and cherish today? Let me set the scene. The year is 2018, and Nintendo's presentation at E3 is nearly over. After a few hard-hitting titles like Metroid Prime and a new Fire Emblem installment, fans were winding down from a hype-filled event when... fans went absolutely wild at the revelation, everyone is here. But amidst all the cheering and fanfare, it was pretty obvious that one tall character was missing. Waluigi, the icon of random and main character of Nintendo's best game of all time, was missing from the party once more. As more and more characters released, hope fell more and more until eventually it seemed certain that Waluigi wasn't to be included in the game. It was here that the Waluigi fanbase started making themselves vocal. Petitions started popping up, music videos were made, and memes were shared. Among those memes came one of the most controversial moments in Waluigi's timeline: the bans by Sakurai. Around this time, as hype was swelling for more and more new characters, two fans sent some awful, horrendous memes to Sakurai and were ultimately blocked. This sent the greater Smash community absolutely wild, instantly labeling the fanbase as toxic because of the actions of these two individuals. Prominent Smash YouTubers called it out, Nintendo news outlets covered it, and we even got a statement from the man whose body is always ready, letting us know that Sakurai was aware of the demand and further petitions were not required. This left the Waluigi fanbase shattered, with a bad reputation, and ultimately silenced. And that leads us to today, where a groundswell of Waluigi support has begun to grow again, but it's constantly struggling to break through that negative stigma left from before and become a legitimate position to hold within the speculation community. Before we get to that point though, there's a few obstacles that we still need to overcome. Starting with a fan backlash, it is absolutely true that those memes were awful and completely unwarranted and didn't do justice to the true deity that is Waluigi. But the implication behind saying that these disqualify Waluigi is that a small number of fans can totally influence the direction of a major company by being mean. The ramifications of this would be that anyone could prevent their least favorite character from being added to Smash just by making edgy memes about them and sending them to Nintendo. Now, I am in no way advocating that or cyberbullying in general, but Nintendo is a big company that can't financially afford to make decisions based on a few fans, and business-wise, they can't afford to establish a precedent of being bullied into submission by a minority of fans. Speaking of finances though, let's talk about the fact that so many people say that Waluigi wouldn't make Nintendo any money. It boils down to two main arguments. Waluigi isn't relevant, and Waluigi isn't canon. If we're talking about relevancy, you're gonna first need to explain how Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix isn't relevant, which seems like an impossible task. Even if you do that though, the next step is to explain why Waluigi is less relevant than the characters in Smash who have been in literally dozens and dozens of less games than Waluigi. If you want to argue canonicity, that seems like a moot point given the fact that the Mario series doesn't even have a canon to begin with. But even if it did, Nintendo separates out the Mario Sports, Party, and Kart series as entirely different entities than the main Mario games. So even if Waluigi hasn't wad his way into Odyssey or Sunshine, he would definitely qualify as canon to Mario Party, Kart, and the Sports series, which are just as relevant, if not more so, than the mainline Mario games in terms of sales, scope, and cultural influence. Now maybe you think that Waluigi would just be too much work to justify his price and inclusion. To start, any sort of talk about the finances of a DLC pick are entirely speculative. We don't know how Nintendo makes their DLC decisions. It could be based purely off of modern sales numbers, in which case I'm going to need you to include the base inclusion of Duck Hunt Dog and the DLC's inclusion of Piranha Plant and Banjo-Kazooie. Sakurai has stated before that clone fighters are easier to make than regular fighters due to not having to build a character totally from scratch, which is why we see Ganondorf in Melee. With this knowledge, I think it's safe to assume that upgrading a character from an assist trophy to a full-fledged fighter takes less work than designing a character totally from scratch. which would be perfect given the current circumstances of 2020 and not being able to invest as many work hours. But despite his inclusion in over 10% of Nintendo's top 50 best-selling games of all time, people argue that he'd have no moveset to pull from due to unoriginality, little personality, and lack of content to pull from. These are all ridiculous claims that are easy to put to rest, but let's go through them one at a time, starting with lack of content. As I mentioned before, Waluigi is in more games than a vast majority of the Smash roster. Like, it isn't even close. Between his absurdities in Mario Tennis, his powerful kicks from Mario Soccer, and his general randomness in Mario Party, there is so much to pull from. One of my very favorite videos on YouTube breaks down possible movesets, but let me quickly add a stage to the mix. Waluigi Pinball would be perfect for our purple hero. You could fight between random interferences by Waluigi, whether it's hitting you with a go-kart, throwing in tennis rackets, or making you play completely random Mario Party-style minigames similar to the WarioWare stage. The music would also be perfect, adding Waluigi Pinball to the mix. In general, there's absolutely no shortage of material to pull from. That said, claims of unoriginality and lack of personality are totally ridiculous. Waluigi and his character design scream Nintendo. His outfit, his giant nose, his pointed ears and elvish toes, and that smile. That darn smile. If you want to see a truly unoriginal character, I could pull up some other icons of gaming, but I think it may be better to talk about his personality. To say that Waluigi isn't full of character has got to be an intentional misreading of every game that he's been in. In Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix, he's seeking to become the greatest dancer in the world just to satisfy his insatiable ego. His general dickery while taunting other players in the sports line of games goes a long way to establish him as an arrogant jerk, but in the best way possible when we see that despite his ego, he falls short every time. That's because that's who Waluigi is. Despite his presence, he can never quite make the cut. Whether it's losing in sports, pooping out at the Mario parties, or failing to get into Smash, that's the whole joke behind the character. Nintendo knows that Waluigi doesn't succeed in his games, and that's why they're keeping him away from Smash. Not to mention his near godly power to break physics and his raw sexual energy that may exclude him from the game. Eventually, Nintendo is going to want to make an incredibly hyped up reveal to get the fans roaring once more by announcing Waluigi for Smash. Do I think he's going to make it in Fighter Pass 2? I'm not sure, but if he does, I think he's going to be the final character. But I also loved this comment by a person on YouTube. Even if he doesn't get in this pack, I could definitely see him being added as a one-off DLC fighter after the pack ends. After all, isn't it just like Waluigi to be late to the party? Speaking of comments, I know I'm missing out on one big part of this argument. He's an assist trophy. Comment after comment on my last video let me know I got it wrong when I said no assist trophy has ever made it in as a fighter. What I was meaning to get across was the fact that within the same game, no assist trophy has ever been upgraded to a fighter. While that fact is true, it is also true that a few months ago we had never had a Spirit upgraded as a fighter. A few games ago we never had a third-party rep become a fighter, and somewhere along the way we saw that rule after rule was shattered by Nintendo because they're gonna do whatever they want to do. But even if Waluigi is an assist trophy, and that would be strange to have him as a playable character, would that be so bad? As Max Ham put it, why shouldn't Waluigi be able to summon Waluigi? We can have Robin summon Chrom to kill Chrom. It seems like if any character were to summon themselves, Waluigi would be the one to do it. If you agree with what I'm saying, make sure to button mash that subscribe and like button, and click the link below to check out my original thoughts on the topic last year to see how they've changed. There's a link to talk to me on Discord as well. Thanks for watching, stay smashing.